Welcome to the Business Law, Estate Planning, and Estates Podcast.
Hello and welcome back to the Business Law, Estate Planning, and Estates Podcast with attorney Thomas Laporte. Thomas is the founder of Laporte Law Group, PLLC. With more than 30 years of experience, he helps individuals, families, and business owners protect assets, plan for the future, and navigate estates and transactions with confidence. I'm Kevin Rosenquist, and today we're talking about probate. Thomas is going to walk us through the process and explain how estate planning can make it a lot easier for your family. Thomas, welcome back.
Thank you, Kevin. Good to see you.
Good to see you as well. Probate is a word that scares people. People are always trying to say, I got to avoid probate, even if they don't really know what it is. So could you first start by just saying exactly what probate actually is?
Sure, and I utterly agree with what you just said. So you hear that phrase a lot, and what does it mean?
All people know that they need to avoid it, right?
Right. So what it is there are probate courts in every state in the union, which includes, of course, the states I practice in. And probate courts are there for, amongst other things, to validate or verify that a last will and testament, which is signed by a person before two disinterested witnesses, very important requirement, is valid. And if there isn't a trust which allows a person to direct his or her assets or their assets into a private contract and let it flow to your beneficiaries that way instead of through the probate process, well, the probate process is there to, one, validate the will, two, appoint the nominee. And usually in the will is a section where the testator, person who's making the will, or settler, which is a gender-neutral term now, nominates a personal representative. The court will appoint that personal representative. However, beneficiaries and or heirs at law can challenge that. So that can result in a dispute. There's hearings that are involved. After the personal representative is appointed, then the court's going to require an inventory from the personal representative of the assets. It isn't a perfect accounting at this point because the next step then is for a first accounting. So if there are bank accounts, for instance, that are earning interest, the personal representative is going to have to file an accounting for every month with statements showing all of the interest earned to the penny. There's a final account that is then required. And before all this has happened, notice goes to all the interested parties as well as notice to creditors. Mm-hmm. In Massachusetts, for instance, there's a 1-year statute of limitation for creditors to make claims against an estate. For instance, if there's a car lease that the person who's passed away still owed, the car lessor leasing company can file a claim against the estate. In New Hampshire, it's 6 months. So therein lies some of the length of the probate process. Ultimately, once all of the debts, if any, are settled and the final accounting is approved by the court because it's accurate, then letters of distribution will eventually be issued, finally allowing the personal representative to distribute the assets according to what the will says. For instance, to my son and my daughter, share alike, 50% each. If, however, there's a need to sell real estate, then the personal representative needs to get a license, which is permission from the probate court. So it can get very involved, even for the average estate.
How long does this take as a general rule? I'm sure every case is different, but is there sort of an average?
Well, since COVID and during COVID, it was inordinately long. Mm-hmm. The courts were at half staff, as they say. I think it was a little less than that, frankly, but don't get myself in trouble here. But since COVID, it's been getting better, but it can take, I would say, a year to 2 years. So bet on that, and that is without many complications.
Wow.
Well, there's so many other cases in probates, not only ones involving wills, but without wills. So there's only so much court time available to spread around.
Yeah, that's a good point. Are there certain aspects that can affect the timeline other than just the courts being backed up?
Yes. And it has happened. If someone challenges a will. He or she, the beneficiary, feels that he or she should have gotten more, or someone should have been awarded this. It can be a will contest, and they are akin to family feuds. It's one of the
Yeah.
most it's akin to a blood feud, the ones I've been involved with, and all of it can be avoided, frankly.
Yeah, those can get real ugly real fast.
Right.
Yeah. So, can you talk about some of the challenges that you've seen families go through when an estate does have to go through probate?
Sure. For instance, aside from will contests, there could be a contest to who should be the personal representative. I
Mhm.
had one of those recently. There can be questions about the marshaling. Did the personal representative compile and disclose all of the assets of the person who's passed away properly? Did he or she account for it properly? All of these uh, requirements can raise a controversy, and that results in even further delays because now there needs to be a hearing or two with briefing from lawyers on each side, most likely, and now we're talking more than 2 years.
Mhm. Wow.
And uh, the expense can get into the tens, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars, depending on the size of the state and the willingness of the parties who are challenging each other to fight.
Yeah, I think in our first episode, our last one, you mentioned something about probate being about how, or twice as expensive as putting a plan in place ahead of time, at least twice as expensive. I think maybe you said, what are the expenses that a family should expect to pay during probate? For example, court or attorney fees.
Well, there are filing fees that are don't go down; they go up. Uh, in the case of a probate where there's no will, one has to pay a premium for the bond, which is like an insurance policy that is required. In New Hampshire, there was a judge actually about 30 years ago, when the courts used to take possession of probate assets. Well, this particular judge absconded with the assets, believe it or not. So ever since then, at
Holy
least in
cow.
New Hampshire, surety bonds are required. No ifs, ands, or buts for folks that have not prepared a will at all. Um, you may need an accountant may need to be retained to help with the accountings that need to be filed. You may have assets in let's say an antique car, for instance, that needs to be appraised because there's no agreement on the value. So you need to hire an appraiser, and you have to get the right appraiser for whatever the asset is. Those are additional professional expenses, and they're not cheap.
Hmm.
That are not uncommon.
Hmm. So how could even a basic estate plan reduce the need for probate, or at least make it simpler? What does it do that really is sort of flips that script?
Well, every family is different. So families that get along will usually agree on valuation and things of that nature. But a good way to make this whole distribution of property to the next generation or whomever our beneficiaries are is to use a trust, because the
Hmm.
courts aren't involved. And the trustee, although he or she, or you can have co trustees, are fiduciaries, have, under the statutes, a lot of discretion. And the trust that I prepare, and most that I see other attorneys prepare, provide that trustee who's selected by the settlor, who would be the testator with the will, plenary discretion, meaning full discretion, uh, not to do anything illegal or unfair, but to manage the assets of the trust. And it flows without all that probate process and expense, most likely. Sometimes those costs are involved, but by and large, it's a much, in the long run, a less costly process, and everything remains private for the most part, and also gives a level of creditor protection for the donor or the settlor and the beneficiaries during life,
Hmm.
as well as fraud protection too, because we're taking it out of the public probate process.
Yeah.
meaning your assets and who was left what.
That's a good point too. Now with the rise of AI and the internet and all this stuff, I mean, a lot of people try to do this stuff on websites using Chat GPT or whatever. What are the dangers of that as far as the probate process? Are there situations where you can find out that a will was like kind of not legit because you didn't go through the right channels?
Yeah, that is. Some of them may work. I've never researched one or compared one. A lot of people that set up these websites and sell these forms online, um, they're missing a requirement, and wills are very strictly construed. It comes from the Statute of Wills that was created in England under common law in the 1600s. Every I has to be dotted and every T has to be crossed according to the will statutes of each state. So they can be wrong. And when you buy one of those documents online, or used to be from the stationery stores, right? Um, that shows you my age. I'm 59 years old.
I
So,
remember that too.
yeah, there's a disclaimer. You have no insurance. So if it's done wrong, you're stuck with not only a bad document for $150, but it's not going to work in probate. And now you're back to the intestacy that you require insurance for
Mhm.
to be appointed administrator. Um, a good attorney is going to have errors and omissions, professional liability coverage. It's not that much more expensive, but you're getting a quality document. It's done correctly. That attorney should stand by you, be available thereafter to make any changes or amendments. We used to use codicils with the typewriters. Now we just create new wills with the computers.
Mhm.
And if it is done wrong by an attorney, most of them, and I think people should ask, will have professional liability to cover the damages may occur from an improperly drafted will.
Okay. Now we've been bashing on probate for a while now here. Are there any situations where it's a good thing or maybe even necessary? Probate?
Probate's always going to be necessary if there is a question as to the validity of a will. Even if one uses a trust, you're going to have a small probate because of the guardianship provisions. But it's going to make that probate much, much, much more streamlined because there's not going to be a large accounting. There's not going to be a large inventory to be filed and appraised and accounted for to the penny. Most of the assets have already been funded into a trust and or will, and I do both, will pour over like a kettle into a cup through the will into the trust. But there's still a small estate, but it's going to fly through. It'll be about 6 months in New Hampshire, or maybe a little bit longer in Massachusetts, because there are no assets in the estate. The assets are in the trust, so creditors have nothing to reach within the estate to settle any claims. All the assets are in a trust.
Mhm.
So it is necessary if one, again, I said in the prior broadcast, if one has a small estate, one has a child or children, absolutely have a will, and probate will necessarily be at the end of the process, at the end of your life. Um, those reasons necessitate probate,
Okay.
as well as others, but we can go
Yeah.
on and on about that.
So I can't remember if we talked about this before, but during the probate process, if someone doesn't have a plan in place, the court decides on the beneficiary, the designations, or the not the executor. What was the name of it now?
Well, they approve the personal representative, which
Personal
has only
representative. That's
been named as an executor, or in prior days, if the person was female, it's called executrix. They approve. They
okay.
approve. They approve the distributions. Usually, it is in accord with the person who's created the will. Um, I've seen, and it's more common than one would think. I've seen situations where the person who's passed away doesn't want to leave anything to a particular child, for instance, they've received monies during their life called an advance, or there's been a falling out, or that person has an addiction or gambling problem, or is just irresponsible, or the other two children are more deserving in the testator's eyes. If that exclusion isn't done properly in a will, well, the judge is going to say it wasn't done properly, and I'm deciding that that person's getting, in most cases, what these two others are getting in equal shares. So that is a scenario where a judge can overrule one's intent if it's not done properly.
Interesting. Yeah, that's very interesting. Yeah, we don't want that. Like if you have specific wishes, make sure that you've got that buttoned up, obviously.
Right. Another reason, and I'm not trying to hear raising the flag for attorneys. It's just I've seen this, so I think a good way to avoid it is to go to someone who knows what they're doing and is insured. Frankly.
Yeah. Yeah. Everyone knows they need a plan, or most people know they need a plan. A lot of people kick that can down the road. Just, I'll do it tomorrow. I'll do it next week, whatever. So if someone knows they need to do a plan and they want to get started, is there like a first step they should take to make things easier, to make things, to get the process rolling in the right direction?
Yeah, I think, first of all, mindset, and maybe this is not the first answer one would expect, but
I think it makes a lot of sense.
well, people don't, yeah, and you're probably reading my mind. People don't like to think of death.
Right.
And so therein lies the procrastination. But if one thinks, well, my loved ones are going to be going to receive this, and it's going to be free as much hassle and cost and expense as possible. In larger estates, and sometimes it's not so large because different states have their own estate taxes. It's going to be free of as much estate taxes as possible. It's going to be free of as much capital gains taxes as possible. And so if they think of those things in a positive light, then the next step will be, well, how do I get this going? Well, let's just make a list of your assets, how they're held, and start thinking about who you'd like to be either the personal representative for a will or a trustee for a trust, and go see somebody and talk to them.
Yeah, I like that. It's almost like reframing. You're not talking about, don't think of it as talking about death. You're talking about how to set your kids, your loved ones up the best way you can.
Right, and help them in their lives, and hopefully help them along the path to success.
Right.
With a trust, for instance, one can manage those assets from the grave. You can provide, and I say to people, for instance, don't leave anything to a child who's not attained the age of 23 yet, because that's going to interfere with their ability to qualify for financial aid. So give it to them at 23, a percentage, and for other specific items that are important and responsible: college tuition, first wedding up to a dollar amount, investing in their own business but not another's, because who is that other person? Is that person trustworthy? And maybe money towards the purchase of a down payment on a first home to avoid purchase money insurance, which requires a 20% down payment, if possible. So it's a good tool. Trusts are a good tool, but planning in general, more broadly, is where one starts, and those are some of the reasons to do it.
Absolutely. Planning. All right. Well, thanks for listening to today's episode of the Business Law, Estate Planning, and Estates podcast. If you want to learn more about how estate planning can simplify probate for your family, visit laportelawgroup.net to connect with Thomas and the team. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel, leave us a review if you get a chance, and share this episode with anyone who you feel could use it. It's great information. Thomas, thank you very much. Really appreciate your time. Looking forward to the next one.
Sure. Thank you, and happy to talk with you and anybody who has questions. Thank you.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button and leave us a review in the comments.